See, that's a bad sign.
Mhm.
That's a sign that a person has some unresolved issues.
Hi, welcome back to Let Me Ask You Something, the weekly podcast where I, MD Pittman, talk to everyday ordinary people about something extraordinary in their lives. Now, this week I talked to Robert T. Gardner Jr. Now, he is what he dubs himself as a relationship change agent. What that is he helps people improve their relationships. And a lot of it's drawn from personal experiences, how he's learned from his own past. So, without further ado, here's my conversation with Robert Gardner.
All right, we are live. Welcome back to the Let Me Ask You Something podcast. We are on episode 19 of this journey where I talk to everyday, ordinary people about something extraordinary in their lives. Now, this week we have Robert T. Gardner Jr. He he has a pretty interesting story. It ends with him. You're in a doctoral program currently, correct?
Starting in September.
So yeah. So well, let me ask you something first here, Robert. What happened in your life that led you on this journey to this relationship readiness work that you're doing?
Okay, well, I have to tell you, we probably need about 3 podcasts for me to tell you all of the details. But I will do my best to give you, the
Take the Cliff Notes version.
yes, yes. But essentially, I made a bad choice in my first marriage. I've remarried since then, and what happened is I saw the signs of my first wife. I saw that she was the type of person that she got mad and she would shut down, and often I had no idea what contributed to that because she wasn't an open or willing communicator, whereas to the contrary, I am a person that likes to talk, work it out, find out
Mhm.
what's happening. But at any rate, I saw the signs of shutting down, anger, and I ignored them because I think I ignored them because just coming up, I had been in a number of dysfunctional relationships, so I was kind of accustomed to, you know, meeting young ladies that I was attracted to pretty girls, but a lot of them turned out, some of them were angry, some of them were sad. I mean, and at that time, I was too young to know. I didn't even know about self-esteem, and that people had issues maybe that affected them in their childhood, which carried over into their adulthood. So I'm just thinking, boy meets girl, and we live happily ever after.
Yeah,
So a lot of my pretty girls turned out to be pretty ugly, with
yeah,
their behavior.
yeah.
And so the same was true for the the person that I married the first time around. And I thought maybe not that I could change her, but I thought my positive energy, the things that we would do together, might just kind of help her evolve. I mean, I really
Hmm.
didn't know, but like I said, I was kind of conditioned to dysfunctional relationships.
Yeah,
So, but at the same time, I wanted to be happy, but when you're used to what you're used to, you kind of just in the comfort
it's
zone.
hard to change. It's really hard to change when you're in your little your lane.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm
Yeah.
I'm figuring, I'm in charge, and I don't mean that from like a manly standpoint. I'm
Hmm.
saying, I was an ambitious guy who,
Hmm.
knew what I wanted to do in life. So anyway, I married this young lady, and early on we had a lot of issues with communication,
Hmm.
and I knew I was in trouble when I told her that I wanted to start my own business. I have a background. My first master's degree is in human resources, and I wanted to start a human resources consulting firm.
Hmm.
And I went to an event to promote my business, and I had just bought a new car, and she called me while I was at the event and told me she was in an automobile accident. So that prompted me to have to leave the event, the entrepreneurial event,
Hmm.
and rush home. And when I get home, I asked her, I said, are you okay? Yes. Did you go to the emergency room? No. Did you file a police report? No. But the damage to the car was extensive. And so what I was able to deduce from not getting a police report, not going to the emergency room, that she crashed the car on purpose, because at that time, I was on a trajectory, I guess, to earn more money down the road, but she was
Yeah.
making more than me, and I started to see that she did not want me to earn more than her. So anything I did, she
She didn't want to see you succeed.
right, and it was
Yeah.
really scary. So we had a big argument about that, and then and so that was that event. And then I said, I've always been funny. And so I wanted to take a shot. At this time I was working for the New York City Transit Authority doing labor relations, because my master's degree is in human resources and labor relations. So I said, this is just my desire to want to be, independent from the
Yeah.
workplace. So I said, let me give this comedy thing a shot. And I started, I'm from New York, so I
Yeah.
started contacting comedy clubs to find out how this no-name
Yeah.
comedian could
How
get
you get
some
up on stage?
Right, right. So, I was told you bring 10 guests, and you're in, so I would call family members and friends to come see me. So my first show, now I had purchased a camcorder for her at the time. This is before cell phones. So
Yeah.
she had it was her gift. So she knew how to work this camcorder. So I wanted to record my first show.
Yeah.
So what happened is, she was going to be late to the show. So my best friend, he and I are doing dry runs at the comedy club, making sure the camera works. We're queuing it up. So then my wife shows, and although at this point we had so much turbulence,
Hmm.
you know, I should not have given her the camera, but I didn't. I'm thinking, okay, this is my wife. So I take the camera from my friend and say, let my wife record it. So it turns out that my first comedy show was really a smash. So I was excited, and I went over and I kneeled down, 'cause she was in the front row. I said, how'd I do? She said, you did good. So I said, did you get it? Meaning, did you
Yeah.
record it?
Yeah.
And she didn't look at me. And when she didn't make eye contact, I got sick in my stomach. I knew
Oh.
then that something was terribly wrong. So I
So
said, go
well,
ahead, I'm sorry.
how did you get from this point to leave this relationship? What led you to get out of this relationship? Because it was mentally and physically abusive from what you said told me.
Yes. Okay. Well, so can I just finish the comedy
Oh
part?
yeah. I'm sorry. I'm
And
sorry. Go
I'll
ahead.
get to what prompted, because
Yeah. Yeah.
that really is key. So what happened is, I said, did you get it? She did not make eye contact with me. So now I'm sick in the stomach. And I said, did you get it? And she said, no, the camera did not work. So at that point, I was mortified.
And you knew she
And
was lying because you guys tested it out.
we tested the camera. It was on pause when I gave it to her. All she had to do was press the red button. So
Uh,
this says again that she does not want to see me. Now I'm married, so anything that I do, you understand, what's going to be
yeah.
my success is her
It's a
success.
success. Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
So now I'm seeing there's a pattern here with the business. Now the comedy
Mhm.
endeavor. Okay. So we at that point we were going to move to New Jersey. We had bought a house. I had decided that I was not going to go, but at the same time I always wanted to live in New Jersey. And my options were slim. It was either go back home to my father, who's a control freak.
Mhm.
I left one control freak to go to another. So anyway, I decided to go to New Jersey. We had a daughter. Uh, and the whole thing. So to answer your question about what prompted me to leave, we I'm doing something else. This is a Saturday, and so so she wanted to get her hair done, and so I was watching our daughter until she got finished with her business with the hair, and then I was supposed to go take care of what I was going to do. So she comes home, and I'm about to leave. She said, "No, you're taking our daughter with you," and I'm like, "No, I'm not. I watched her. I did my part." So that turns into this heated argument. And so at this point, with all of the turbulence and the ups and downs and the mood swings, I had a meltdown, and I got in her face. I mean, just right in her face. And I just said, "I hate you. I believe in hate you. And I don't behave like that."
Yeah.
But I had reached my limit,
Yeah.
and of patience, of confusion, of not understanding, like, why is she behaving like this? So after that exchange, me, just having that meltdown, telling how much I hated her, she started punching on me. So the good guy that I am, I wrap her up with my arms. I don't hit her back. She called the police, and the police come to the house, and they're talking about that they want to go down to the station. And I
Mhm.
said, "Well, listen, I didn't do anything, nothing broken, there's no blood, she was hitting me."
Mhm.
So so they said, "Well, Robert, she said you punched her in the stomach." So now she called the police and told them I punched her in the stomach after she assaulted me.
Yeah.
So they said, the police said, "So do you want to file a charge?" But at that time, our daughter was 2 years old, and she was crying in the middle of all of this. So if I tell the police that I want to press a charge, I was concerned that they might put my daughter in the system. So I
Yeah.
had to take the L for that. I said, "No, I don't want to press charges." So they locked me up. I've never been
Because
locked
yeah.
up in my life. So now I'm in a jail cell. I'm crying. It was like, it was unbelievable. I'm crying, and I'm like, so I just came to the realization while I'm crying. It was like I was in the movies, and it was like I was in a movie. While I'm crying, I said, "Rob, you got to get out of this, man. You have to leave." But I
Mhm.
didn't want to leave because I had a daughter, and I wanted to
Yeah.
raise my daughter. You
Yeah.
you understand? But I realized that this was a bad situation for me. Now she's lying to the police.
Mhm.
Uh, and I have to choose myself in this scenario, because this could get bad. So when I decided that I had to divorce her, I stopped crying. It was like the sun came out in the movie. You know how the music goes,
Mhm.
"Oh,"
The
you
sudden
know,
realization of the idea that you have to have make a decision. Yeah.
right. So I said, "Listen, you got to get out of this. You have to get out of this." So, just to fast forward, I divorced her, and that's when the journey began in terms of why I do what I do today. Essentially, after divorcing her, we went to court. I had to pay child support. And it's so funny because after I started paying child support, my friends started saying, "Rob, you losing weight. What are you working? You working out?" And I said, "No, no, no, I'm not working out. I'm on that new diet." And this was around the time of the Atkins diets and all of
Hmm.
that. I said, "I'm on that new diet." They said, "What new diet?" I said, "The child support diet where you can't afford to eat." Because I was paying $880, a month.
Yeah.
And although I was earning a good salary, but now I had my own place, a new car, and
Yeah.
the child support was sucking, all my
Yeah.
money.
Hmm.
So, so at any rate, I'm in. It was about a 10-year battle in family court just over issues with her interfering with my visitation, and it just a whole bunch of uh, family court stuff. I got to the point where I could not afford an attorney anymore. I started representing myself. I
Hmm.
lost my I lost my apartment, because of um, the attorney fees, and it was just a bad scenario. So at any rate, one day I'm driving on the New Jersey on the Garden State Parkway, and I'm crying and I'm screaming and I'm cursing because now I'm divorced, but I'm broke. I'm constantly in court because she's interfering with my visitation and things like that, brainwashing my daughter, turning her against me. So while I'm cursing and crying and screaming, I said to myself, I said, Rob, look at, and it's raining on this day. It's raining too. Now it's raining, right? So, so I said, look at you. Look at the control that you're giving her over your life. She's not even in the car, and you're crying and cursing and screaming. So I'm having this discussion with myself.
Yeah.
So I said, listen, you got to let this go. You have to let this go. So, I'm still driving and I'm thinking, I'm like, well, if I let this go, then you're also going to have to forgive her. And I'm saying, no, no, I can't forgive her for all that she, has done.
Yeah.
But, I'm just going through the process.
Yeah.
So at any rate, I realized that part of, letting go is also to forgive. And I wouldn't be letting her off the hook. I would be allowing myself to move forward. And so when I decided that I was going to let go of my, see, I'm not an angry guy, but I was
Mhm.
angry in that scenario,
Yeah. Well, because
because
your limits have been reached for so long. I mean, it's a multi-year multi-year process at your limitation.
right, and
Yeah.
I'm a good guy. I'm not perfect, but I'm not a troublemaker.
Hmm.
And I just wanted to be a father to my daughter, and she
Hmm.
did everything to get in the way of that. And so I find it amazing when a man wants to love the child, the women keep, the children away. But if I'm a deadbeat dad, then I'm a deadbeat dad. I mean,
Yeah.
so it's like you can't win. So at any rate, when I arrived at my destination, when I realized that I had to let this go and forgive her so that I could move on and take back the power of my life, the joy that I was losing, focusing on being mad at her, the idea to write my first book was born, which is,
Hmm.
the choices we make. And so as a result of that, I said, you know what? I'm going to write a book. And it was really an amazing experience because as soon as I decided to let go of that situation, the idea to write a book came into my head. So at that point, I said I'm going to write a book. I want to start doing public speaking to help educate people to learn how to make good choices to find healthy relationships. Because you see, anybody can get into a relationship, but what we should be looking for are healthy relationships with good communication. No intimate partner violence and things of that sort. So I wrote my first book, published it, and then I started speaking, in schools, high schools, churches, community centers, anybody that would listen. And so, as a result of that extended experience I had in court, I was inspired to write another book, which is my second book, I'm sorry, entitled Access Denied. And that book is about, the father's journey in family court and all of the politics and dynamics of what happens during that process while one parent uses the child as a weapon to hurt the other parent. So I write my second book, but also in between that time I decided to go back to school and get a second master's degree. I figured since I was going to be writing about human behavior, I should acquire some credentials in
Hmm.
that area so that I didn't want my books to be about my opinions and feelings. I wanted my books to be based on evidence based research because I
Yeah.
wanted them to make a difference in the lives of my readers and the people that I spoke to about this experience. So ultimately, I went on to Rutgers University and acquired a second master's degree in social work.
Yeah.
And so then I started a business, Relationship Readiness. That's my brand,
Yeah.
because what relationship readiness is, what I've come to realize is that we as human beings are not ready for relationships. And this is essentially because adult dysfunction stems from our childhood experiences.
Yeah.
We grow up, some of us are molested, some of us, our parents die early in life, some of us, our parents are on drugs and alcohol, some of us are adopted, some of
Yeah.
us grow up in foster care. And so these early life experiences shape your emotional state. And some of them lead to us having emotional deficits like feeling insecure, not trusting,
Yeah.
angry, or broken. And so we grow up, and then as adults, I see a young lady that I think looks good. She sees a young man or middle-aged man or what have you, that we're attracted to one another. But inside, so many of us are broken and
Yeah.
fractured. And
Yeah.
and so
Because but before your issues with your marriage, your first marriage, you had a lot of adversity and seemingly insurmountable odds with. I think you said your mother died when you were 9. Your older sister had overdosed on heroin.
yes.
So you've had that broken family in a way before you had another broken family.
Right. Well, you see, though, those experiences did not, like, I wasn't w- w- just for lack of a better word, I wasn't damaged by those experiences.
Hmm.
Yes, it was a tragic thing to lose
Yeah.
my mother suddenly, and then 3 years later, almost to the day, my older sister overdosed on heroin, and then 3 years after that, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes,
Oh,
where
wow.
I'm insulin dependent, and
Yeah.
I was, the doctors told my family at the time, had they waited another 15 minutes to bring me to the hospital, that they would have been picking out a coffin for me.
Oh,
So
wow.
that early, like, all those traumatic,
Adversity. A lot of
right,
adversity.
but those experiences inspired me.
Yeah.
So I wasn't angry, you
Mhm.
know. I just came to realize that my mother would want me to do something with my life,
Yeah.
especially since my sister overdosed on heroin. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So you can't have two kids go down the drain. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So those were, and then my parents were divorced, but my father, was in my life. As a matter of fact, he's still in my life. He's 87 years of age now. So I had aunts and uncles and both grandmothers, both grandfathers. So I had a nice support system
Yeah.
that, I guess just kind of transcended. It was sort of like osmosis, where as much as those experiences was so tragic, with the support network that I had, I got through, and I
Yeah.
came through. I came through, in a big way, if you
Yeah.
will. So I'm not perfect, but what I'm saying is my childhood experiences did not, break me. I wasn't
Yeah.
angry. I wasn't,
Yeah.
I've never been, molested or
Yeah.
anything like that, but I was able to overcome them. So
Yeah.
when I get to the marriage, my first marriage, I meet somebody who's totally broken.
Yeah.
And she never, I used to suggest to her that she did get some kind of counseling, but she would not, avail herself to counseling. And so it was just, I was dealing with somebody that was, she was, and I'm not, I don't want to, I'm not wanting to bash her in her
Hmm.
absence. She's not here to defend herself,
Hmm.
but I'm speaking the truth. You understand? And she just was a level of evil that I had never seen. And as a matter of fact, I spent 10 years in family court trying to explain to the courts about her behavior, and they never listened, of course. And then ultimately, she physically abused my daughter. And so I wound up with custody.
Okay.
So
So
So,
how is your daughter doing today, and how is your sister doing?
well, my sister died. She
Oh,
overdosed.
she died from the overdose, because I know you can have an overdose and not die, but she ended up dying from that overdose.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
She was 20 years old, and I guess she had a strong package, but
Okay.
it took her life. And then, like
Okay.
I said, but my daughter's fine now because what happened was once my daughter started having issues with her mother. Her mother would put soap in her mouth and spank her, and call her all kinds of names. So living in New Jersey, I would report her to DIFUS. And DIFUS used to tell me, Robert, this situation is bad, but there's no black and blue. So in other words,
Yeah.
they would
You got
not.
to have some physical evidence.
Right. So every other weekend when I would pick my daughter up, I would ask her what's going on in that house. Are you all right? So in February 2014, it was the matter of fact, it was Super Bowl Sunday. I picked my daughter up. No, it was Super Bowl weekend. I picked her up
Mhm.
on the Saturday. I said, "So what's going on in that house?" She said, "Well, Dad, I got a beating last week." She said, "I got a beating last week, and I still had the blood on my leg." So I'm like, "What?" So I said, "When we get back to the house, I'm going to give you some shorts. I want you to put these shorts on and let me look at that leg." So we get back to the house and I look at the leg. It looked like she had iron burns up and down the right side
Oh
of her
my
leg,
God.
and there was blood still oozing out of like. And this was a week after the beating.
Mm.
So I called DIFUS again,
Yeah.
and they came and they removed her from the house. I was awarded custody.
Yeah.
Then the mother, of course, she had to get parenting and all these other
Counseling.
things.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they exonerated her record and she went back to work like none of this ever happened, you know. But that doesn't matter because my daughter, I was able to get her counseling to work through that. And so now she's in her senior year um, of college. She just bought herself a new car. She's very happy and she's making a lot of good decisions.
Yeah.
She used to tell me for Father's Day, Dad, what do you want for Father's Day? And I used to say, listen, what I really want, I want you to make good choices, no
Mhm.
teen pregnancies. If you want to give me a gift that I want, make good choices, no teen pregnancies, stay out of trouble. And
Yeah.
so I look back now, that made so much sense because I'm starting to realize that she's a senior in college, no teen pregnancies, she's made good choices, and I'm like, that was really a
Yeah.
valuable, type of kind of lesson.
Yeah.
And I'm like somewhat proud of myself that I even thought to think of that because
Mhm.
see, that's what I really wanted anyway. Materially speaking, I have everything that I could have ever wanted. And you know what happens when your children buy you gifts. You know what happens there, right?
Mm.
You
Yeah.
don't want, you
Yeah.
don't like what they get you. So I'm like, if you want to give me something I like, make good choices. No
Yeah.
teen pregnancies, finish school, go to college, and live a good life. And I really, I'm enjoying the fruits of that decision because she's doing the things that I asked her to do.
So let me ask you something here, Robert. What does it mean to you to be a relationship change agent?
Okay, wow, that's a good question. Well, what I do is create programs. I do seminars and workshops, and I go into, I can go into, say, a woman's, a shelter where women have been abused,
Hmm.
or I can talk to high school students because that's where it starts with the abuse with high school students and even college students. And so to be a relationship change agent, what I do is I bring my program which is called Relationship Readiness. And the idea is that, because remember I told you that I said that we as humans, and this is based on my research and understanding, are not ready for relationships because the divorce rate is 50% the first time, and it's 64% the second time, and
Oh,
71% the third time. So the old adage, practice makes perfect. So why is it that the more we get married, the worse the
push. Yeah.
statistics are? So that supports my narrative that we're not ready for relationships because, for the most part, and not everybody, but a large majority of us come to relationships broken and fractured and angry and empty. And so when you come to a relationship like that and you don't trust and you feel insecure, or you watch your father beat your mother, those things become the way that you see
Mhm.
women, relationships, or the way women see men. And so that leads to the dysfunction.
Yeah.
So
Perpetuates the cycle.
right. So what makes me a relationship change agent is that I my program talks about these issues from our childhood and help people try to look at, you know, because see, we all have issues. And so the
Hmm.
way to address them is to acknowledge that you have issues. And if you
Hmm.
acknowledge that you have issues, then you can deal with them. And then when you work through those issues, you begin to evolve into a more healthy person, not only to have a healthy relationship with other people, but relationship readiness is also to help you have a healthy relationship with yourself.
Now you're in New Jersey, so you are helping people in your corner of the world. What advice could you give somebody in California, somebody across the ocean, to help be that relationship change agent in their corner of the world?
When you say help them be a change agent, or are you
Yeah, or
saying to
just
help
help
them
help
find
help them help them
find
find
good
what.
relationships?
Yeah, I mean, how what advice would you give to somebody who is in California, in Washington State, across in the UK or Australia? How can they be a change agent to help people to help themselves?
Well, right. That's right, because everybody doesn't want to be a change agent, but they may
Hmm.
want to find healthy relationships. So
Yeah.
that is a great question. And I want to say what I'm talking about in terms of relationship readiness, this is appropriate for, this carries through for all races.
Hmm.
White people have domestic violence, black people have domestic violence, gay people, or
Yeah.
have, so this is not a black thing. this
Yeah.
is this is a people thing. You
Hmm.
understand? So it goes across the world. Now, part of what happens across the world is that there are many cultures, and a lot of our cultures are, patriot pa- you know
Patriarchy.
patriarchal.
Hmm.
So it might be hard to penetrate the cultures, because your culture is your culture. If
Hmm.
you're from the Caribbean, or wherever you might be from, culture will may prevail because that's the way of life. But when you
Yeah.
just talk about, just I'm just gonna say America, okay?
Yeah. Hmm.
Even though this is appropriate for all human beings, but when you start talking cultural,
If.
differences and things like that, culture gets in the way, because some cultures it's about the man. I mean, I'll
Hmm.
keep it like in the Italian culture. I had a professor at Rutgers who is divorced because she was in, a relationship where it was male dominant. You do what the man says, and there was some violence, and
Hmm.
you've seen the stories. Well, he's a good man. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
you like, in other words, you take that butt whipping, and
Yeah.
because he's providing for you, you have the beautiful house. You might be
Yeah.
totally unhappy, but you have the beautiful house. So
Yeah.
just understand that,
Yeah.
absent the cultural kind of dynamics that could come into play. I'm just talking straight up. You just a straight up. There's no cultural influences. So if you're dating, if you're a man or a woman, this is what I recommend. How you can weed out those individuals who may not be relationship ready. So you're dating, right? And it looks like it's going to be serious because when people start dating, they're usually like, well, how many kids do you want? Where did you go to school? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? All of those are not the questions that you ask. Those questions after you ask the questions that I'm going to share with you.
Okay. Yeah.
So you're dating, and my name is Robert. So just say my girlfriend, I'm dating a girl named Sheila. So Sheila says, tell me about Robert the little boy. So I say, well, when I was a little boy, I grew up, in a public housing project. My parents were divorced. And unfortunately for me, my mother died when I was 9. My sister overdosed. And so I'm able to talk about, the bad part of my life, and I can go through that. That's a good sign. So now if Sheila says, tell me about Robert, the little boy. Or this can work the other way. If Robert says, tell me about Sheila, the little girl. And so Sheila says, well, why are you asking me about Sheila? What do you mean, Sheila, the little girl? Well, I'm just trying to get to know you a little better. And I want to know, how's your life? Did you know your father? How was your relationship with your... No, I don't talk about my father, and I don't want to talk about that. And why are you asking me these questions? See, that's a bad sign. That's a sign that a person has some unresolved issues that, one, they're not willing to talk about. And if you're not willing to talk and we're trying to get to know each other, you're not going to talk when we're married and it's time to talk about what happened to the money or how we're going to solve this problem. And so when a person shows, they may shut down, because that's what my ex-wife would do. She would shut down. And I didn't recognize it. Well, I recognized it, but I ignored those signs. So, see, talking is easy and it's free. And just like I'm talking to you, this is the first time we've met. Yeah. And I'm able to share with you my background, my life. I mean, this is a podcast, but even if you and I was maybe in a sports bar and we started talking and you say, hey, man, tell me a little bit about you. See, I would open up and I'd tell you about myself. Yeah. And so that's a good sign that I'm willing to communicate, that I'm able to communicate, and that whatever issues that I may have had, they don't appear to be hindering my willingness to communicate. They're not affecting my attitude or my happiness or my anger. So when people are not willing to communicate and they may get angry, they may shut down, that, like, if I say, tell me about Sheila, the little girl, that could change the whole dynamics of the date. She's like, well, how you go from Sheila, why are you asking me that? Why you want to know about Sheila, the little girl? See, because that's where it all starts, where Sheila was a little girl. Yeah. Now, we have some experiences, of course, as young adults and things like that. But what I'm saying is a good portion of the crazy stuff happens to us as children. Yeah. You understand what I'm saying? Yeah. So if Sheila or Robert or Sam or Sally is willing to talk and they can laugh about it and talk about it, that's a good sign that that person has either reconciled with their issues or they may not have anything that, haunts them from their past. Right. But if they refuse to talk, if they shut down, if they get angry, that's when you're supposed to say, you know what, Robert? I think you're cute, but, I'm gonna keep it moving. So you understand that recipe applies to everybody. I don't care what your race is, even your culture. But if your culture is your way of life, then your culture is going to prevail. So I'm just talking about straight up, without the cultural, inferences.
The basic human nature.
Right. Yeah. If a person is not willing to talk, and talking is free, it's free. You understand?
Yes, and it is.
And you can see that they shut down or that their attitude, their whole disposition changes, that means that they have some issues that is troubling them, that they haven't resolved, that they're not willing to talk about, they get angry about, and you cannot have a healthy relationship coming into relationships like that.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, Robert, I think that's about all we have time for, because we're running on against the hour here. We're actually about 45 minutes into this conversation here, which is kind of the cap of what I try to get with the podcast. But we will definitely try to have part two of a conversation here.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate that.